reporting on the games you love by people who love to game. The MMO Reporter Network.
MMO Reporter's PAX Prime coverage is brought to you by Dragon Fantasy, The Black Tome of Ice, a 16-bit styled JRPG coming soon on Steam, iOS, Android, 3DS, and Wii U.
My name is Simon Finch, and I'm the design director for Rift here. And with me is Marko Sohrakoff.
Simon.
Sort of.
Sohrakoff.
Sohrakoff.
Sort of.
I know. I told you I would mangle your name.
Oh, I know.
I've only known you for how many years now?
2.
Anyway, so what we're showing here today is another huge expansion for Rift. It is a whole new zone. The Planetouched Wilds, that for people that have been playing Rift from the beginning will know has been on the map since day one. The thing is, though, that during the time that it has been there, it actually got ripped out of Mythosia, where it lay for years, and was sent through space and time and the planes and has become changed. Marko, can you just show me the map? It had got a lot bigger. I don't know if you remember how big it actually used to be on the map, but it's about 4 times the size now. So that whole area there is a whole new level 65 zone. Along with that, we are launching a new expert level dungeon, 5-man dungeon, a new 20-man tier 3, that's going to be the highest tier raid, a new Warfront, which is actually a whole new Warfront type. It's an assault mode Warfront. I'll tell you a bit more about that in a bit. All of the stuff that we always do in the zones, new artifacts, new puzzles, the whole 9 yards. And then also, for the first time in Rift's 4.5 years, we're introducing a new calling. So you'll be used to the cleric, the mage, the rogue, the warrior, and now we're introducing the Primalist. And for those of you that play Rift know that the calling is kind of like the holder for the souls, and you can have up to 3 souls in your calling, and you can mix and match. And along with that new calling, we're launching with 6 new souls, so a whole lot of variety. So massive update, 3.4, or Into the Wilds, as we call it. So Marko is playing Primalist right here. We're
playing the Vulcanist Soul right now, which is a single target range DPS spec.
Okay. So also just, I'm not going to go deeply into the lore, but if you remember, the Planetouched Wilds is the home of the Barmy. They were also the ones that discovered the primal power that is the Primalist, even though all of the races can be a Primalist if they so wish. Anybody that starts a Primalist will be starting from level 1, so it's kind of like getting to play all of Rift in a whole new way. So down at the bottom of the screen there, you can see the focus bar. That moves from Cunning on the right to Fury on the left, with Harmony being in the middle, and different abilities will control where the indicator in the middle there goes. It's also good to point out that what you're seeing here is early pre-beta, so a lot of stuff is still being worked on. So a lot of the abilities that the Primalist has will depend on where the focus bar is. Some abilities will actually do different things depending on where the focus bar is. You have quite a bit of control over actually moving the focus bar. There are even some abilities that exclusively work when the focus bar is at one particular position.
And are there abilities that will swap you out completely if you want to be in Cunning, but you're all the way in Fury? Are there abilities that will jump you all the way to the other side?
All of the different souls have different ways of manipulating the bar, so some yes and some no. There's quite a lot of strategy involved in making sure that you are set up for your big attack at the right time.
Right.
So it does add a whole new feel to the whole game. So I'm pretty excited. I'm very split between, am I going to jump onto my high-level characters and explore Planetouched Wilds, or am I going to start a Primalist and start from the beginning again?
And will the Primalist have all 3 roles available? Will they be able to do tank and DPS and support?
Yes. So, Marko, why don't you run through the 6 souls and a little bit about what each are?
We have the Titan. The Titan is our tank spec, or our tank soul, sorry. And if you roll Titan, you will be a giant meat wall standing in the way, protecting your allies and taking all the damage. We have the Dervish. The Dervish is a single target melee DPS spec, meant to move quickly and strike down using a lot of wind-type abilities. And then we have the Vulcanist, which you saw me playing before, which is a fire-based Fire and Earth-based ranged DPS spec. With Berserker, we have our first melee AoE spec, so you kind of get into the thick of things, pull them all in, and cleave them all down. And then we have the Typhoon, which is another AoE spec, but this one is ranged, primarily using water and wind type attacks. And our healer, which I don't actually have a soul set up for, because who likes watching healers? It's all about the damage numbers. Is called the Preserver, and he uses a lot of seeds and a lot of life-based heals, which makes sense, because he's healing.
Okay, so why don't we, this is Planetouched Wilds, huge zone, big quest line, all of the stuff you've come to expect in the zone. But also, let's, seeing as we're short on time, let's jump right in and start looking at let's do the dungeon. So the dungeon is Razade Canyon, which actually does exist in the Planetouched Wilds as well. So there's a whole, open world aspect to this area as well, but there is a dungeon themed around it too.
So the very first thing that our players will see when they run into Razade Canyon is just a bunch of wonderful environmental art. We've got crystals everywhere, some running krill animals, just very nature-based. And they'll first come up to this little guy like, huh, interesting, that's a nice little trash pack that we have to deal with. But actually, it is the first boss of Razade Canyons. One of my favorite parts about MMOs is seeing a bunch of numbers on my screen. And what better way to do that than with an AoE boss fight? So players will be fighting tens of krill, killing them all, getting all these giant numbers on the screen, just having an awesome time, feeling really good about the numbers that pop up on their screen. As the fight goes on, there will be more krill coming, more getting enraged, and until you kill enough, and then you eventually kill the king krill, at which point the fight is completed, and there is the king krill. You kill him, you of course want him to leave you alone. I'm tired of you, krill. Don't bother me. While Razade Canyons is mostly a nature-based dungeon, it is not completely nature. It's actually the remnants of an old ancient civilization. And that is actually where the crux of the storyline comes in. Is the Ascended players are going around trying to stop Teth from making an army that he's creating with the Ascension Machine. The Ascension Machine is essentially taking control of the minds of beasts and other kind of balmy primalists, the citizens of Planetouched Wilds. So let's just jump right to the Ascension Machine. This is probably one of my favorite pieces of art in Rift. It just looks fantastic. It's a very big room. It's the final boss fight of the dungeon. You have Teth, who is the bad guy trying to make the army. And as players fight him, they'll be kiting him from room to room, eventually getting inside the Ascension Machine itself to destroy him. Unfortunately, due to VFX, I won't actually be pulling him. I did pull him. Whoops. Like Simon said, still work in progress with a lot of that stuff. So players will be pulling him room to room. These rooms will be lighting on fire, making players move into the next one. After pulling him to enough, we'll get up behind the Ascension Machine, where we can finally kill Teth. So we actually will pull him up here and defeat him once and for all. And that pretty much covers the quick and dirty of the dungeon.
Let's go into the raid.
The raid.
So we've just recently in Rift we've been players have been doing the Nightmare Saga. That is a huge quest line, pretty tough quest line, and this is the sort of culmination of their efforts, and they get to come into the raid, and it finishes up the story. So Marko, go.
So at the end of the quest line, players will end up here, and that doesn't really end the story. So players are wondering, well, what's next? Like Simon said, they hop into the raid, and that's when the story actually gets to continue. So here we're at the Nexus. At the Nexus, players will be able to choose between 3 different wings, which way they want to go. It's a 9-boss raid with 20 people per raid. So you want to bring 19 of your friends, preferably more in case some of them end their friendship, because they might not be holding up to the part of the deal. And they'll just run along, pick their wing, and fight their own bosses. And here we have the End of Reason, which is probably the first wing that players will be going to. The first boss we'll have one group here, one boss here, and another right here. The players will actually have to split the raid into 2 groups of 10 and alternate between these different pillars because they'll be getting a stacking debuff, making it so they can't just camp on one and fight it the entire time. And if you notice this moon, it's not actually a moon, but just keep it in mind. Simon likes to say it's not a moon.
That's no moon. You gotta say. That's no moon.
That's no
You gotta
moon.
say.
That's no misquote.
I think he's too young to know the quote.
I don't know it actually, but I've been pretending like I do all day. Here we have the first wing boss of Mind of Madness, and it's Lady Justice. If you notice the room, you have these giant scales in the back, right? And if you notice her weapon, they also are scales. As the fight progresses, she'll be lifting the scales up and down. So this scale will be going up here, and this one will be going down there. The players have to run up the ramps and jump on the scales to mimic what she's holding up. So if she has a scale up high, that same scale needs to be up high, or else players will be taking a lot of damage. So in this boss encounter, or brouhaha as I like to call it, players will need to mimic what she's doing on her with the environment itself. So they will be interacting with the raid boss, fighting her, attacking her, killing her, while mimicking everything with the environment. Now if you remember the not a moon, I got it right that time, that's just where we are now. So we get to port up here and fight our next boss, which is the Dark Genesis. Now you think this is kind of a weird little fight environment. We've got this ring. That's not the end of it. There are multiple rings. So not only will players have to run around the rings and fight him on one level, they'll have to run around and fight him on two. And if you take a look at him, it's pretty ferocious, pretty scary looking guy. And it's difficult, because if you fall, well, it's not a good place, not a good thing to do. You will take death. It's not a fun place to go. And this is the wing boss of the second wing, the Heart of Darkness. And we've already shown you two, but there's one more. And that is kind of the unknown. There's not a lot known about it. If we just drop in there, you'll see what I'm talking about. It's a very organic, synapsy kind of forest. Very crazy. If you like Pink Floyd, which I don't, I prefer the Mulan example. The song Be a Man, The Dark Side of the Moon. That's where we are. We're as mysterious as the dark side of the moon. This is a very cool zone with poisonous fog. Players who have to run around these paths being attacked by all sorts of nature. The population for the raid isn't quite in yet. And here we have sort of the mini-boss for this wing, the Old Growth. He's a fun fight. He's a personal favorite of mine. We'll alternate between a day and a night cycle. So at night we'll have certain mechanics happening, but during the daytime we'll have a brand new set of mechanics happening. If players are not able to complete the night phase quickly enough, then they'll persist through the day phase. But the denizens of the night don't like the light. So they will be pretty upset, and it might go poorly for the players. But like I mentioned, that is just sort of a mini-boss that's kind of leading up to one of the most impressive looking bosses we have in Rift, which is the Enigma. He sort of speaks for himself. He's a giant, mysterious blob who players will have to run around this and attack to defeat him. When he actually spawns in, sadly we don't have the animations, is the pieces of armor on him will be being pulled out of the environment, which is really neat. And
Okay, let's hop into the Warfront.
alright, let's head up to the Warfront.
So as I mentioned earlier, the Warfront is actually a whole new Warfront type. It is an assault mode Warfront. It is 15 versus 15, so it's one of our biggest that we've done. When you start, you will either be attacking or defending, and then depending on how the game goes, either the timer will run out or the attackers will take all of the control points, and the teams will switch, and the defenders will become the attackers and the attackers the defenders. And then at the end, it will tally up who took the most control points. If it's a tie, who did it quickest, and they will be deemed the winner. So Marko is in the first room here with the first control point, and as you can see, there's a lot of environment effects and things that you need to navigate around in the environment as well. There are even parts of the environment that you can control. There's like a cannon at the end that you can power up and use it to decimate the attackers. But of course, they can actually get hold of the controls themselves and turn it off. So there are other areas in the map that you're going to need to be able to, defend as well as the main control points. This is the second control point right here. Don't stand on the spikes. I think that's pretty obvious to players by now.
I wasn't supposed to do that?
You weren't supposed to do that,
oh,
no.
Man. Uh-oh.
And this is what I was saying before about it having the feel of the Iron Tomb. This is actually the Bronze Tomb. This is Assault on the Bronze Tomb. So again, that is an area that has always been on the map in Rift, and now the players are actually going to get to explore it and fight each other there. And here we are going to the last room now. This is where the cannon is. Mark's going to power up the cannon. This is definitely something, if you're the attackers, you don't want to let them do.
So as you can see, we kind of have the energy or electricity powering up the cannon.
Has planar power there, I think. So I'm really excited to see what players do with this and what strategies start coming out. And this is an entirely new type of PvP, so we'll see how it goes.
And after the attackers successfully or don't successfully assault the final room, the tides will turn. And the attackers will become the defenders, and the defenders will become the attackers. And now I'm on the
so obviously it's hard to actually show a Warfront that's supposed to have 30 players in it with just one player running around, but that's the Bronze Tomb. So do you guys have any questions? Anything particularly you want to see? I mean, there's a lot of other stuff.
Are there any other, I saw the cannons that are in there. We've seen assault maps in other MMOs as well. Is there anything else that differentiates this map from other ones that we might have seen in Tor? They've got the assault maps as well and some other games.
Yeah, I'm not a very good person to actually answer that because I haven't seen them, so I don't know. Maybe.
Thanks for watching the video, everybody. Don't forget to check out all the other podcasts at MMOreporter.com or by clicking on any of the links here. And please check out our Patreon campaign at patreon.com/MMOreporter. Thanks, everyone, and see you in game.